Have you ever wanted to travel to a place like Ireland but thought you'd never be able to afford it? For much of my life I wanted to go to Ireland, but I always thought I would do it someday when I could afford it. I began to doubt that someday would ever come, because I just assumed the cost would be out of our reach. My daughter Ellie and I decided to investigate the possibilities, and we were eventually able to take a 3-week vacation holiday to Ireland and the UK for just $1,700 each. Here's how we did it, along with some of the most useful tips we learned along the way. One of our biggest goals was to make the trip as inexpensive as possible, while also doing the things that we really wanted to do. We didn't want to be restricted to a tour because we wanted to be able to go to the places that we chose to go, and we didn't want to be restricted to how much time we could spend in one area. So we decided to design the trip ourselves and find a way to save a lot of money doing it. Before we started, I had some ideas about a few things I wanted to do, but for more ideas I ended up doing a lot of research online. Ellie joined some online Facebook groups of college-age girls who travel regularly. We asked them for their advice about what they thought was worth seeing the most. We printed a map of Ireland off the internet, and we began marking the locations of places on the map that sounded interesting to us. We noticed that most of the things we wanted to do were grouped together in certain locations. Then we started to sketch the path of where we wanted to go to see all of those things. We wanted to have as much time as possible to see as much as we could because we didn't know when we might have the opportunity to go again. We also wanted to visit friends in the United Kingdom and possibly in Scotland, so we decided to add a little time to make that possible. With that in mind, we decided to make our trip 3.5 weeks to allow ourselves travel time without taking away from the actual vacation. We made a spreadsheet roughly planning according to our sketch of places we wanted to visit, with each column representing one day. We listed the items we thought we might like to do on each day and ranked them in order of what we thought we'd like to do the most, leaving ourselves the opportunity to make adjustments when we arrived in Ireland. That turned out to be a good idea because when we were there, we discovered that we had overestimated how much we were going to be able to do each day. Later in the planning, we decided to cut some of the plans and change the days slightly, and the spreadsheet made it easy to adjust within the time frame we originally set. We knew to get a good price on airline tickets, it was important to buy them ahead of time, but we started looking at prices 5 months ahead of time so that we had time to see what was available and what usually was a good price. Every few days we checked to see what the prices were, so we knew about what to expect it to cost. We decided we would leave on a Tuesday and return on a Thursday to avoid the extra expense of traveling on the weekends. We decided to visit in April so we could see Ireland when everything was green, but avoid the additional cost of traveling in the busiest part of the summer season. Just in case we missed anything in the planning, I decided to follow some media in the countries where we were going, websites and newspapers online, to see if there were any recommendations for things we might want to do that we hadn't thought about. I saw an article in a London newspaper that said Tuesday was one of the best days to buy airline tickets, and it happened to be Tuesday. So I went back to check the airfare price Tuesday evening, and it was 30% less expensive on that day than on the average day I had been seeing. We purchased the tickets on that day, which was 4 months before our planned departure date. We used justfly.com to search prices over several airlines. The key to getting good airfare prices is to search frequently, 3 or 4 months ahead, and try to be as flexible as possible to avoid traveling on the busiest days and times. For accommodations, we decided it was more important to get a good price than to stay in a fancy hotel, so we investigated Airbnb. Airbnb is a website where local people can connect with travelers so they can rent out a room in their house, an apartment, or whatever they have available. I had heard of Airbnb, but we really were not familiar with it. But in the course of checking it out, we discovered it was easy to find nice places to stay in private rooms in people's houses. Not only were the rooms usually a lot less expensive than hotels, but the local people often provided a basic breakfast and guided us to the best things to see. All of the Airbnbs we stayed in were pleasant, and some of them were nicer than a significantly more expensive hotel. Airbnb was one of the biggest ways we saved on our travel expenses. Check out our Airbnb video for all the details about how to find accommodations at Airbnb and about our experience staying in other people's homes. You can also get $40 off your first stay if you use my link to Airbnb in the description below. As our plans firmed up, we also decided to book our other transportation. We bought train tickets and our sail rail to Ireland using a website called RailEasy. RailEasy had lower rail prices than other places, but if you book advanced tickets through them, the tickets are usually not refundable or changeable, so you'll want to make sure you won't need to change the dates. We bought our train tickets in Ireland directly from the Irish Rail website at irishrail.ie. Rental cars can be a bit tricky in Ireland. Ireland has a lot of regulations, and insurance on the cars can be a lot more expensive if you're not extra careful. This is partly because many tourists are not accustomed to driving on the left, and many of the roads are very narrow. Some credit card companies offer rental car coverage, which ours did. This can be a huge cost savings, but you should read all the coverage details and call your credit card company if you're not sure how it works. We were required to present a letter from the credit card company to the car rental company to confirm that we had the proper coverage. The rental company tried to upsell us to a full coverage insurance, which costs significantly more, like 3 to 4 times as much, so make sure you do the research so you know ahead of time what you really need. When driving in Ireland and the UK, you're not only on the left side of the road, but the driver sits on the right side of the car. Vehicles with automatic transmissions can cost 3 to 4 times as much to rent, so you'll save a lot if you're able to drive a standard. Shifting is on the left, but the shifting pattern is the same as most American vehicles. To save money, we reserved the smallest car we were able to get. The amount of space was perfect for us and our luggage, but also driving a smaller car makes it a little easier to navigate the sometimes very narrow roads. One rental company representative tried to rent us a larger and more expensive vehicle, and after driving the smaller car, we were happy we declined the larger one. It's important to know that if you're a young driver, you will probably not be able to drive a rental car under the age of 23 in Ireland, and if you're under 25 years old, there will be significant additional charges, so make doubly sure you know the details before you leave home. A rental car gave us a great deal of freedom to go where we wanted, and we were able to go places we would not have been able to go without a vehicle. But it did take some time to adjust to the driving conditions.
You're really close to the curb.
So make sure you budget extra time to allow for this. We had good success renting cars through Auto Europe at autoeurope.com. The system was easy, it gave us accurate estimated costs for multiple car rental agencies, and their site had useful information and helpful 24-hour customer support. You'll need to make sure you have a valid passport before traveling. If you're in the United States, you can get passport information from the State Department website at travel.state.gov. It generally takes 4 to 6 weeks to get a passport, so you'll want to apply as soon as you believe you'll be traveling. If you'll be traveling on short notice, you can go to special offices where you can get expedited passports for an additional cost. We were able to fill out the passport application online and take it to our local town hall to submit it. You can do a search online to find out where to submit a passport application near you. Be sure to read ahead about which documents you need to bring, because if you forget something, the application will be rejected. You will need a passport photo for the application. There was an option for us to pay to have a photo taken at the time of submitting our passports, or you can bring your own. We elected to pay for this rather than bring our own because the requirements are very specific, and many self-made photos will be rejected. For some destinations, you may need additional visas, so make sure you know the rules. When we traveled, additional visas were not required traveling from the United States to the United Kingdom and Ireland. It's essential to get phone service with data in the country where you're going to make it easier to find your way around. This is much cheaper than renting a GPS with a car. If you have an unlocked phone, you can buy phone SIM cards super cheap in Europe. In Ireland or the UK, you can get a SIM card at Tesco grocery stores for about £5 or €5, and then add as much time as you need at a lot lower cost than American phone plans. We bought a month of service for about $30 in Ireland, and then a separate service in the UK. This made it easier because we could use the GPS on our phone and also refer to maps anytime we needed them. After transportation and lodging related expenses, we considered the costs of other things largely optional, and we chose to spend the money on things that were the most important to us. Food costs can vary greatly from slightly more than home to very expensive depending on what you choose to eat and where. Prices are often less expensive just a little bit away from the main tourist areas. We were told that pub food was less expensive than regular restaurants, so when eating out we mostly ate at pubs or cafes where the prices were about $10 to $15 or about €10 to €15 per person, about the same as a typical American restaurant. We also bought food at the grocery store, which was less expensive than eating out. There were lots of options, but we often bought pastries, fruit, and cereal. It was fun shopping and picking out food at the grocery store as much of it was new and different for us, but not particularly expensive. For admission charges to castles, museums, and other venues, it's often possible to get substantial discounts online, so it's helpful to look into it a few days before arriving at a destination. We didn't spend a tremendous amount on these things, but a few things that were more expensive were definitely worth the cost, including the Edinburgh Castle medieval banquet, and a performance of Wicked at London's Apollo Theatre. Our Airbnb host in Killarney recommended we rent bicycles to visit the national park, and it turned out to be a fun, easy, and inexpensive option. We spent some money on optional expenses we could have cut to save even more, like separate train fares to visit friends in other cities, and the sail rail trip, which we wanted to take just because we thought it would be fun. Sail rail was a journey from London to Dublin by train and ferry. We made the trip on the Irish ferry's Jonathan Swift Fast Ferry. The sail rail was one of the most fun parts of our trip, and we highly recommend it. Check out my sail rail video to learn more about it. Our most favorite things were the things that were not the most popular tourist hotspots, and we also found that the countryside and the smaller towns were more fun for us than the larger cities. Edinburgh Castle is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Scotland, but because it's still an active military installation, many of the buildings were not accessible, and because of its popularity with tourists, it was not as much fun as many smaller and remote castles we visited. So when we had a chance to visit the Tower of London, one of the most popular tourist destinations in London, we decided against it because of the high admission cost, as well as the huge number of tourists. We did realize that an adventure vacation, where you're constantly seeing and doing things, is not the same as a relaxing vacation, so you will need to decide what kind of trip you're planning. We had already decided not to plan a lot of sightseeing in the first few days, so that if we suffered with jet lag, we would have a few days to recover before getting into the busier part of our trip. That ended up being a good choice, as Ellie struggled with jet lag the first couple days. We began to get tired after 2 weeks, so that would probably be the optimal amount of time to spend per visit. I recommend planning to stay in each place for several days, and if necessary, reducing the number of places you plan to visit. We planned 2 days in each location, and that was still too rushed. We felt worn out having to go from place to place too quickly, and eventually started cutting our plans to allow for more downtime. So that's what we did to be able to travel to Ireland and the United Kingdom for just $1,700 per person. That $1,700 included the cost of airfare, trains, cars and boats, and travel and car insurance, as well as all of our accommodations for a 3.5-week vacation holiday. We had a great deal of fun, and it was so much less expensive than we had expected. Thanks for watching. I hope this was inspiring to you and helps you with your plans in the future.